Hello everyone, welcome to this Poultry World seminar about optimizing digestion in poultry production. We are here live from Bangkok, and we have a live stream going on as well as a lot of people here in the room with me. My name is Fabian Burgter, and as the editor-in-chief of Poultry World, I will be the host of today. Thank you for the picture, Vincent. Today, as I said, we want to discuss the important topic of optimizing digestion in poultry production. As we all know, feed costs make up the largest part of the expense in poultry production. So optimizing feed conversion is critical for the profitability, sustainability, and of course, the whole industry. In this seminar, we will explore key factors influencing feed conversion, digestibility, and of course the inner workings of the gut. Our three expert speakers will share their knowledge, innovative strategies, and practical insights to help you achieve better feed efficiency and improved bird performance, and of course higher economic returns. After each of the three presentations, you have the chance to ask questions to our speakers. So don't hesitate to do so. Before I introduce the first speaker of today, I would kindly ask you to turn your telephone to the silent mode, so we can be uninterrupted moving forward. Our opening speaker of today is Roger David. Roger is poultry consultant and product manager at Scottish Feed Research. And in his talk of today, he will focus on how we can get the energy from our feed into our birds, among other things. Roger, the floor is yours. Here you are.
All right, good afternoon, everyone. Thanks, Fabian, for the introduction, and also thank you for the invitation to be present here. Also, thanks to the sponsors to make this event possible. So yeah, we'll be talking about optimizing nutrient digestion in poultry, and I would like to discuss these 4 points on why, what, where, and how. I don't know if I will have enough time in 15 minutes, but I will try to touch upon these 4 points. So on why we need to optimize nutrient digestion to improve efficiency, I would like to start talking about the costs on the different nutrients in poultry feed. And as you can see in this graph, it's obvious that energy is by far the most expensive nutrient. It accounts about 70% of the feed costs. That's followed by protein and amino acids, phosphorus, etc. But for energy, what is very critical is to have a good energy prediction system of feedstuffs and also additives. So if you could have a very accurate prediction system, you are going to be able to reduce safety margins. And then here you see as examples, if you try to reduce safety margins on amino acids, you can save about 0.2, 0.3%, but with energy, if you're able to reduce the same, at the same magnitude, the energy, then you will see that you can save even more money. And of course, if you want to have a good feed evaluation system, you need to make sure that this system allows you to predict variability between feedstuffs, but also within the same feedstuffs. This system needs to give you good ranking of corn, wheat, sorghum, etc. But also, this system needs to predict additive values from the different feedstuffs. Moreover, you need to make sure that the nutrient values that you're obtaining from feed ingredients are matching also nutrient recommendations. So if that happens, then you can obtain optimal performance. And I put an example here of a trial that we did a couple years ago at SFR. And here you can see on the x-axis the different energy levels that we used. And in columns, I'm showing the body weight gain, and in the line, I'm showing the FCR values. And then you see that if you work in relatively high protein levels, you see that while you reduce energy, body weight gain remains more or less the same. But then what we observed here when we were going lower, 50, 100, or 150 kcals, FCR became a little bit worse. And that may be critical for some of the producers at the free market. Sometimes for integrators, if you're able to save costs on energy, that can already be of interest. So when we're talking about energy prediction and energy feed evaluation, you will have many different recommendations available. So you may have the CBB tables, Abiagen, the Spanish FEDNA, the Brazilian tables. But you need to be aware that each feeding table will result in different evaluation of feedstuffs and diet composition. And the most critical point is not to mix these different systems. So this, at SFR, we have our own feeding tables, we have our own digestibility studies, because digestibility at the end is the most critical way to accurately measure energy content of raw materials. So usually, we have digestibility studies in battery cages. We measure the intake, the excretion, and then we calculate the AME value. And now we are also working on moving to the net energy system as the swine people have done in the past. And when we do these digestibility studies, we evaluate the digestibility of the energy-rich nutrients in feed, right? So in feed, you will have some protein, you will have some fat, carbohydrates, ash, and minerals. Ash and minerals don't have any energy content. So if you evaluate protein, fat, and carbohydrates of each raw material, you will be able to get a good energy evaluation of your raw material. And of course, if you have some products, some enzymes, some additives that can help improve the digestibility of these components of a raw material, you may be able to also improve the energy value of your raw materials. And usually we measure that on battery cages. And then, we know that for the chicken, the broilers, or the birds in general, they have a very efficient gastrointestinal tract. So it's a very short and doesn't have teeth or doesn't have jaw muscles to facilitate flight. And then different organs in the gastrointestinal tract are already adapted for the digestion of those different nutrients that we said are critical for energy evaluation. In the proventriculus, there is already some digestion of protein thanks to the secretion of gastric acid and pepsinogen. In the pancreas, there are enzymes secreted that will improve or will digest starch, protein, and fat. And in liver, the liver will secrete bile juices that are critical for fat emulsification. And the bile salt, these are bile acid conjugated with some amino acids, so that also it's critical when reducing protein that you have enough of those amino acids for fat digestion. And finally, if you understand the different systems that we measure protein, fat, and carbohydrates, it's also important to understand better what is the paper of fermentation. And the point is that in Zika, only small particles will enter there, and microbial fermentation will produce volatile fatty acids that should also have energy content. But usually on the digestibility systems, we don't account for them. So that's an improvement point for probably the energy evaluation systems. And so how to improve optimal digestion? What factors are influencing this digestion or efficiency? The first one, as I already mentioned, it's very critical to have an optimal feedstuff evaluation system that will match also the nutrient requirements of those birds per age, but also per animal category. So in our system, for instance, we have energy system for broilers, energy system for layers, energy system for ducks we want to implement as well. But also digestibility can be really affected or really impacted by gut health. And in a way, this is also related to the nutrient content in the diet. So if you have an excess of protein or undigested protein, that will induce a negative effect on gut health. So really you need to formulate closer to nutrient requirements. At the same time, gut health can be improved by enzymes, and especially for poultry, it's very critical to reduce intestinal viscosity. So if you reduce viscosity, nutrient digestion can be increased, energy value can be improved as well. And also, last part of the list, probiotics, prebiotics, symbiotics will also improve gut health. But at this moment, it's a matter to understand if these products can increase energy evaluation. But for enzymes, we think that, as we reduce viscosity, that has a positive effect. And I would like to finalize my presentation with a study we conducted at SFR some time ago. So here we tested 4 diets, all having the same lysine level, with 2 different protein sources, or that conducted to different protein level. Let's say the high digestible crude protein sources resulted in low crude protein level, and low digestible protein sources resulted in a high crude protein level. And these diets were fed with or without antibiotics. And then you can see that for body weight on the darker blue columns, the positive effect of antibiotics was bigger in the high crude protein level, the same as for FCR. If you look at the high crude protein levels, antibiotics had a much better improvement on FCR. However, nowadays we are all working more on the low crude protein side, and then the effect of antibiotics is much reduced. Moreover, if we measure biogenic amines, so you see that antibiotics have a great effect, but if we are working on a low crude protein level with less undigested crude protein, antibiotics have a smaller impact on growth performance. So the main takeaways of my presentation is that energy is the most expensive nutrient in poultry diets. The use of a consistent matrix for feedstuffs, and it's critical, and also it's critical that the matrix for feedstuffs matches the bird nutrient requirements. The bird's intestinal tract is prepared for a very efficient nutrient utilization already, and more focus on a specific nutrients will improve efficiency and overall FCR. Nutritionist has a key role on formulation with the help of feed additives, and also in the next years, I will say LCA should also become more and more relevant, impact even more than LCF. Thank you for your presentation.
And thank you for your presentation.
And I would like to take any questions.
Who wants to ask the first question of today? No, you want to have a moment?
So I think to move to the work on these energy systems is quite intriguing. How do you see the usability of net energy systems, considering, let's say, heat increment and how that can be different between open houses or closed houses, etc. So how practical is it for a nutritionist to try and to achieve net energy systems in their formulation?
Yeah, so at SFR we are working on this topic, moving from the metabolizable to net energy. And to move from metabolizable to net energy, you need to account for the heat increment. And then heat increment is especially big, especially high when you digest protein. So protein has a huge heat increment compared to fat or the digestion of carbohydrates. So that will mean also that in low crude protein diets, net energy will give bigger added value. So in other words, when you reduce crude protein, when you reduce crude protein, you usually observe that birds have more abdominal fat. So that also will mean that the bird in a low crude protein diet context require less energy. So in a way, you can already reduce the energy system you're using. But I think if you move to the net energy, it could become more precise. But we are working on it, and we still need to validate if this is really the case. Yeah.
Maybe to continue on that, when you are going to a lower and lower energy level, are we putting the birds at risk at a certain point?
Yeah, that's a good question. We did some trials also reducing crude protein. So usually some people set a minimum on crude protein level. Okay, they say, okay, no, we should try to put a minimum on lysine, but there is always some nutrient that we use as a safety margin. Some people call it a non-essential amino acid to lysine ratio. Some other people use a glycine plus serine to lysine ratio to make sure you have enough non-essential amino acids. So we observe that if you go too low on these safety margins, then performance is lost. So the hypothesis here is whether there is a minimum requirement of nitrogen, or maybe we are missing, or we don't understand the requirements of certain amino acids that may be there, but we don't have the data. So that's actually also a topic we are working on, to understand the requirements on histidine, phenylalanine, alanine, all kinds of amino acids. That's one hypothesis. The other hypothesis is that maybe the bird also requires some nitrogen pool, as it's called.
Okay, so this research ongoing all the time at Shorthurst.
Oh, yeah.
Any questions? I have one. You touched upon antibiotics and the effects thereof. Of course, in the past they were known as growth promoters, and that was with the reason, as far as I'm concerned. What would be the best alternatives to antibiotics to optimize nutrient digestion?
Yeah, what I tried to also exemplify on this study is that, yeah, when in the past when you had higher crude protein levels, you didn't mind because the antibiotics were a safety measure to be considered. What I will say is if you have no antibiotics, then you really need to be more accurate, to be more precise, to reduce safety margins on formulation. So that means being as close as possible as the nutrient requirements. So try to meet the lysine requirements, all the amino acids, and also for energy, of course.
You have to be much more careful with the gut of the bird.
Yep.
All right, well, thank you for sharing your presentation, the work at Shorthurst, and thank you for your question and answer.
Thank you.
And that brings me to the second speaker of today, which is Arno de Krij, and he is Marketing Director at IFF, and he will give us an insight beyond digestibility, focusing on gut health and the vital role of enzymes in maintaining a favorable nutribiotic state. Arno, please go ahead with your presentation. Please, oh, sorry, please click from here.
Thank you for staying this late in the afternoon, much appreciated. If you want, after the talks, we've got a whole crate of cold beer and sodas at our booth, so you're most welcome to drop by and have a beer and continue the chat. So I really love the talk of the previous speaker, because I think it really is a nice setup for what I want to talk to you about next. So you as a producer, you have many challenges, right? And of course, lowering down the feed cost is typically considered, let's say, the primary driver of the work. But there are all kinds of other external and internal challenges, like, for example, reducing the antibiotics, which can be driven by either your customers or by the regulatory environment, environmental regulations which push you to look at, for instance, nitrogen and phosphorus emissions, animal welfare considerations, for example, the Chinese government coming in and demanding a 2 to 4% reduction in the crude protein level, etc. Right? But I would really like to take this to taking a moment and to actually look at food safety, right? Which is a consumer concern, and how, let's say, the work on digestibility actually impacts food safety for the consumer. Now, let's talk about Campylobacter. And the screen is flashing that my time is up, but I will happily ignore that, right? So Campylobacter is the leading cause of gastroenteritis in humans. And it is, from a human health perspective, a far greater or far more damaging pathogen than Salmonella is, right? 90% of cases are caused by Campylobacter jejuni. You need only roughly 100 cells to cause an infection, right, which is 10 to the power 2. And currently there are essentially 0 bulletproof control strategies. There are no vaccinations. Now, we look at Campylobacter and we think of nutritional virulence, right? This is essentially, if you're familiar with our work, we look at nutrition and health through nutribiosis, which is a state that's the interaction between nutrition, the gut, and the microbiome. And nutritional virulence is essentially the impact that nutritional components have on bacterial behavior, right? So it is a subset of nutribiosis. Now, if we look at Campylobacter and we think of farm to fork developing strategies for control, of course, we first need to understand Campylobacter, the pathogenicity. There's definitely, let's say, a place and an impact for legislation, right? As governments become more and more aware of this issue and where it comes from, it will drive increasing legislative pressure to act on this. And that then brings us to consider what kind of technical approaches can we use. Right, because there's a complex interaction between host microbiome and also dietary interactions. And I'm happy to announce that we have some initial results of a proof of concept approach that uses this foundation of nutritional virulence, right? How we feed the bird impact this pathogen. There is a European Food Safety Authority study already from 2011 that concluded that if we have a 1 log reduction, so 90% reduction of Campylobacter in the gut, that we see 0.6 log reduction of Campylobacter in fresh poultry meat and roughly a 50% reduction in disease. Right? So reducing the Campylobacter burden in the slaughtered bird has a direct impact in the risk of disease. Right? And if you think back of 33 million deaths annually, this is a huge opportunity and huge potential. Now, when we look at Campylobacter on the farm, we typically see this pop up around 3 weeks. And why is there this lag phase? Well, this lag phase that occurs on the farm is driven by many different things, right? By how we feed it, what we feed, by how the gastrointestinal tract development occurs and whether we stimulate that or not, by industry practices such as stocking density, biosecurity, that impacts when we actually bring it into the farm, and of course by how good our biosecurity is, how good we control the external factors. Now, if we come back to this holistic approach, right, of nutribiosis, of recognizing the interplay between nutrition, gut and immune function, and the microbiome, there are 2 key nutritional components, and those are iron and phosphorus. And when we look at phosphorus for starts, and then we'll come back to iron in a moment, phosphorus is something that is very critical to the bird, right? If there is insufficient phosphorus, you all know your birds will develop leg and bone problems, and you will have a big mess in your farm. So typically we add inorganic phosphates to make sure that there's proper bone development. But of course, coming from a company that has developed extra VIV Gold, the leading phytates in the market, when you talk to me about phosphorus, I immediately think about phytate. Right? And we have demonstrated, and this is, for instance, a study that looks at different phytate levels in the diet, that we can easily achieve 95% or more of phytate degradation. Right? If I look at typical doses of phytase used in diets today, typical producer only degrades maybe 60 to 80% of phytate, right? So there is a lot of phytate left in the diet. Now, why is that important? Because if we would actually optimize our phytase dosing, we can actually move to inorganic phosphorus-free diets from day one. Right? This is something that we've demonstrated in practical diets, right? Because extra VIV Gold is so efficient, we can actually degrade 85 to 90% or more, even with practical dosing. Right? So if there is sufficient phytate P in the diet, we can deliver all required phosphorus through phytase. Now let's look at iron, and then I'll come back to Campylobacter and how we can influence this. Now, iron is also a critical trace mineral for both for the bird as well as for the microbe, right? And of course, there is essentially a very strong competition for resources ongoing, where the host, so the bird, they chelate iron, right? So they produce proteins like transferrin and lactoferrin that bind iron and that capture it and keep it away from the microbes. And the microbes, the bacteria, in turn, they produce siderophores to try and capture iron from the host, right? So there's really this tug of war ongoing. Now, Campylobacter, interestingly enough, does not have its own iron capture system. So Campylobacter relies on other parts of the microbiome to feed it iron. And this is a weakness in Campylobacter that we can exploit. Of course, for the host, for the bird, iron is very critical, right? Because iron-sulfur complexes, from a biochemical point of view, are involved in numerous really critical processes for biochemistry, right? Respiration, nitrogen fixation, amino acid metabolism, RNA repair, DNA replication, regulation of gene expression, right? So if there is a shortage of iron sulfur, you will really see a strong negative impact on the bird. Now, looking at trace minerals from a nutritional point of view, most basic raw materials, right, have ample trace minerals, right? Copper, zinc, manganese, iron. But phytate reduces the bioavailability of these minerals, right? And since we typically do not fully degrade phytate, right? Since we typically only degrade roughly 50 or 60% of the phytate in a diet, as nutritionists, we end up adding significant amount of trace minerals through premixes. And the interesting part of my predecessor talk is that he showed you with the low and high protein diets that in the high protein diets there are more biochemic amines. Why? Because we're overfeeding the hind gut, and when we overfeed the hind gut, opportunistic bacteria come up. It's very clear. All these excess nutrients feed opportunistic bacteria like Campylobacter. So can we do something to reduce the use of these trace minerals, reduce the overfeeding, and have a better outcome? So we set up a couple of trials, right? And what we did here is we made a test diet that was essentially free of any trace minerals. Right, so we used a premix that did not contain any added iron or dicalcium. And we, of course, then dosed phytase, and then we looked at different mineral premixes. Now, okay, so, and what we showed, the no trace minerals is on the left, in gray without phytase and with blue with phytase. And if you look at this no trace mineral diet, once we add phytase to it, we see exactly the same iron concentration in the liver as in all these diets where we have added trace minerals. So purely from, let's say, as a liver biochemistry as a first sort of indicator, there appears to be no need to add iron to these diets. Now, this is just, let's say, a liver biomarker. This is not performance. So let's look at this a bit more closely. Then we looked at the microbiome, and we looked at how much Campylobacter do we now find. And we see that in the test diet, we see almost a 1 log reduction of Campylobacter load. And thinking back to this EFSA study from 2011, 1 log reduction in the gut is 0.64 log reduction in the meat, is 50% reduction of disease load. Also, if we then take a closer look across the entire trial population, and we sampled many guts, right, and then we did enumeration, we see that the number of birds that have a very high load of Campylobacter, so more than 10 to the 8 colony-forming units per gram, we only have 2% of birds that have this very high load compared to 6% in the control. And we have only 20% of birds that then reach the next threshold of 10 to the 6th versus 30% in the control. Right, so the number, whereas the totally Campylobacter negative birds increase from 12 to 16%. So we have clearly shifted, we have in total reduced the overall Campylobacter load, but also shifted a large fraction of the birds from this very high risk category to a lower risk category of infection, right? So this is quite a meaningful result from a, let's say, food safety point of view. Now, of course, this is only initial work, right? And I think addressing Campylobacter requires further understanding and more work, right? But it's important to keep in mind the host, right? So what are the host responses, symptoms, physiological status, genetics, microbiome, the microbe, so do we know who's causing the problem and why, so what is interacting with what. And then production, right, the contributing external factors, where diet is clearly a contributing factor, and we're continuing to push for better digestibility, better feeding to the requirements of the birds instead of the requirements of the opportunistic pathogenic bacteria in the hindgut is really the way to go, right? And we can be sure that environment and husbandry is, of course, a big component of this, and that due to the impact that Campylobacter has on human disease and the growing awareness also through, example, the EFSA studies, we can be sure that more and more countries will put legislation in place to drive down, let's say, the disease risk through these kind of efforts. Thank you very much for your time, and happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much, Arno. Who has a question for Arno? Well, then I have a question for you. Who thought that Campylobacter was an actual problem in our industry? And do you have a remark on that, Christophe?
Well, first of all, thank you for your presentation in a very sensitive point for the poultry industry, and specifically on a problem which is not necessarily a red flag today in poultry industry globally, as we are facing many challenges, of course. One of the questions I would have is beyond the learning here is, did you identify differences between the different Campylobacter or different regions in the world in these studies?
So we did not go down to, let's say, a subspecies level indication to see whether of the total Campylobacter population, there is a shift between pathogenic or more or less pathogenic strains, right? That we simply didn't have the qPCR biomarkers to do that. And we're also, let's say, quite early in this work to look at sampling across the different global regions to see what would be more or less sensitive. But that is really a great question and something we will definitely will also keep in mind in ongoing work. And you're right, that if you ask producers nowadays, is Campylobacter a problem, then it is not top of mind, right? But there is currently in India quite an outbreak of Campylobacter, and it's quite clear that poultry industry is clearly implicated, right? As the EFSA studies clearly show.
Yeah, that was one of my questions as well, Arno. Are we realizing the extent of the problem as an industry?
No, I think, look, we have so much on our plate, right? We have so many challenges to deal with that I think it is quite, well, in a way it's unfortunate, but it's also quite normal that we deal with the biggest fires first, right? So this is absolutely not a blame game, right? But this is something, as we learn more, as we become more aware, and as we also understand, right, the impact of nutrition on, if we see these effects, right, that lower protein diets lead to a better gut health state, so that the impact of antibiotic growth promoters is less, right, because there's a better gut health, right? As we see these effects and start to internalize this, we can progress and come up with novel and better solutions that overall move our industry forward. I think that's the important part, right? We should all work to move the industry forward.
Mm-hmm. And the research you have shown, will that solve the Campylobacter problem?
It will be a small step on the long road of the journey, right? So it will, look, I don't claim that this is the magic bullet, right? But I think this is it's also a good thought experiment, right? What can we do? How impactful will this really be in a practical system? It's something that we're currently looking at. And I think it is part of a broader group of initiatives that we as an industry need to take to really tackle this problem.
So maybe focus a little bit less on Salmonella and move a little bit more into the Campylobacter space.
Yes, that could be indeed a good recommendation at the moment.
Okay, but never forget Salmonella, because
Never
it's dangerous too. Arno, thank you very much for your time, presentation, and
thank you for the
question and
opportunity.
answer.
Thanks.
Thanks. So now it's my pleasure to introduce the third speaker of today. Christophe Bosvinois is Global Portfolio Manager Poultry at Novonesis. And today he will give us an important insight in so-called biosolutions. Innovation in this field continues to drive FCR improvements. Christophe, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Fabian. Pleasure again to be here in VIV Bangkok with you guys in the room. Definitely we're going to speak around biosolutions. But before to start, I would like to ask you, who had the chance to eat a yogurt or cheese this morning? There you go. So you may know that to make cheese and yogurt, you need biosolutions to make them, okay? Who has a car in this room? Okay, we have a little bit more hands. Okay, so you use diesel, probably for these cars. And probably you know that maybe you use bioethanol as well for your cars. And again, to make bioethanol, you need biosolutions, which help to produce bioethanol. So I am still missing some hands here. So who had clean clothes here in this room? Please raise your hand. Okay, more people. See, no, you have dirty clothes? No, okay, so you can. So again, to make detergent and to make them efficient, biosolutions helps. Why? Because we use enzymes in detergent to improve the quality of the cleaning of the clothes. So you can see that biosolutions, beyond these examples, are really part of our life. And they are the part of the life of our chickens as well. Before going further, I would like just to introduce Novonesis. Novonesis is somehow a very new company. We just celebrated our first year. But indeed, it's coming from the merge between two more than centenary companies. One is Novozymes, specialist in enzyme, and the other one is Christiansen, specialist in probiotics and good bacteria. And basically, by merging these two companies, we were creating one of the global leader in biosolutions with more than 100 years of experience when you combine the two companies indeed. So despite the young age, we are very pleased to welcome you in your booth if you want to know more on Novonesis, which is just in front of the door, Challenger 2. Microbiology is really, really at the heart of Novonesis. We strongly believe in biosolutions, whatever they can be. Bacteria, enzymes, functional proteins, you may name some of them. But fundamentally, the application of this biosolution in the world, and I gave you some examples this morning, just right now, is just enormous, and that's definitely the area where we are today. Novonesis, in very short, this is a very, very R&D-driven company. More than 20% of our people are scientists in R&D, and of course, we spend more than 10% of our revenues for improving, through innovation, through our research, the new biosolution we can bring to the market, regardless of the different industries. At the end, the title was FCR Challenges, correct? Okay, and just regarding these challenges, which is a very basic one, but very important one for the poultry industry, like the first speaker mentioned, we need to think about biosolutions. Why that? Well, first of all, FCR is a key performance indicator in the poultry industry. You know probably by heart this kind of pie, 60, 70%, 75%, if we include even the feed we need for the day-old chick and their parents, is dedicated to the cost of production. So FCR is a key element we cannot neglect. There is no doubt around that. However, what do we think about? What is worth one little point of FCR? Basically, it's just 1 cent, 1 euro cent, almost the same, $1 cents if you want. This is what we are fighting, where the poultry industry is fighting right now. So that's just to show you how little is important at the individual birds, but of course, when you have millions of birds, how crucial it can be. But that's why we are fighting today. All of us in our industry, producers, feed millers, feed additive, we are all fighting to help the industry to save an additional euro cents per bird. And definitely, let's realize that the industry made an enormous job in the last decades. Here, this is a publication which was done at the beginning of this century, indeed, to look how, what was the impact of the improvement in FCR between genetic, nutrition, or somehow a combination of both. And of course, we have to realize that 63% of the improvement in FCR was driven by genetic. They made an amazing job, as you know. 28% of this improvement were done by nutrition, and somehow 9% was a combination of genetic and nutrition. So let's say 1/3 of the improvement where we are right now, and where my speech will be how we can improve this 1/3 and continue to improve that for the next decades for the industry in the future. And let's look to the past. Biosolutions, I think it was mentioned by the previous speakers, play a very important role in the industry. And that's just to give you an example from where we are coming. We are coming from a story of 30 years max, when the very first enzymes were adopted by the poultry industry with phytase. Then a new generation of phytase. Protease came in. And of course, xylanase, amylase. All the industry adopted little after little this first part of biosolution, which are now an evidence. But I can tell you 30 years ago, I was in a room where the first phytase was presented, and it was a big revolution at this time. And now it looks obvious. But similarly, in terms of probiotics, again, it's a pretty new story, less than 20-year story, when the industry started to use probiotics for the benefit of the birds. Improve the digestion, fight pathogen, reduce the leaky gut, helping the birds to produce more with less, which is basically the purpose of feed conversion ratio. So how we can continue to improve through biosolutions. This is really the challenge we have in Novonesis to continue this journey, bringing not only enzymes, but as well probiotics to the industry. So some of the questions we have, very frequent one is, okay, but at the end, does enzymes and probiotics work together? I can tell you we have many trials on this one. I just mentioned one here we conducted in Europe where indeed this customer used both enzymes, and you can see here many enzymes, xylanase, glucanase, phytase, mannanase at the same time, even with anticoccidials, ionophores here in this case. On top of that, he made a trial with one of our triple strain probiotics in Novonesis in the feed. Very simple, let's say, trials, control against a treated flock. And that's the result we get. Commercially, it could save 3 points of FCR, 3.5% improvement in European performance factor. And you say, what about the weight? Indeed, the weight was the same in both cases. The main difference was that it could slaughter the birds half a day before when using a probiotics. So to answer to the question, does probiotics work with enzymes? Does all these biosolutions can work together? Here from this trial, the answer is yes. So you may say, okay, why yes? And indeed, if we want to continue to decrease FCR in the future, the key point to this question, why biosolutions can be combined and why should we look to enzyme and probiotic at the same time, always we refer back to the mode of action. And that's what I want to give you as a key message here, take-home messages here, that we can continue to improve FCR through biosolutions, precising that we understand the mode of action. Here it's one of the study we run. Again, it's I won't go into all the details of the study, but long story short, we saw also that dosage matter. And of course, using probiotics, if we use different dosages, we have different results. And in the sample where we use either 60 ppm of a combined bacillus strain or 100 ppm, we had different results. So this is also something we need to understand beyond the mode of action, that which dose do we target for which result. When we look deeper in the gut, to understand better the mode of action, we need to understand what's going on in the gut. At the end, we can make any kind of slideshow, brochure, marketing brochure. At the end, the chicken are right, okay? You with me? So this is what's happening in the gut, where we have to make sure that this typical ratio, villi over crypt ratio, increase when we use a probiotic. And that's what we can see here, where significantly we know that we increase the nutrient absorption because we increase basically the surface of absorption when we use this particular combination of probiotics. So this is another explanation how probiotics works. And of course, you may say enzyme may do that, but also it's an additional aspect in terms of efficacy. Similarly, understand the mode of action. One of the speakers mentions interaction with the gut, and I strongly agree with what you said. We need to understand what's going on at the epithelium level, what we can call epithelial integrity, and make sure that all these tight junction, which make the gut not only longer, more surface, but also stronger, okay, with less leaky gut, with less risk to have bacterial damages here. And that's what you can see here again in this research, where we double check that this tight junction and these fold changes are significant for the bird. Immune system, similarly, again in this study, we looked to different combination of Bacillus subtilis, and we did see that we can increase the quantity of IgA, IgG when we are using our combination of poultry probiotics. And of course, that's absolutely critical to not only protect the gut, but help the gut also to fight pathogens. And lately, microbiome. That's a key word we have in the poultry industry in the last years. In this research here, we look to the effect of another pathogen for food safety, which is Salmonella. And what you can see on the top of this graph in gray is what happened when you challenge a bird with a Salmonella, adult birds with Salmonella. And here in light gray, you have the normal microbiome with kind of subclasses of bacteria. And in black, on the top of the graph, you have the impact of a Salmonella typhimurium challenge on the bird and on the microbiome. Nothing wrong happened to the birds. They didn't die for that. They are adults, they are laying eggs, etc. So nothing happened to the birds. But look at the microbiome. Typhimurium really challenged back the microbiome of the bird, even without, let's say, clinical symptoms. So can we restore this balance in the microbiome with probiotic? And that's what you see on the second graph below, where the challenge group in light green was using in the black bars one of our leading triple strain probiotics. And then you can see that at the exception of one class of bacteria, all of the other one came back to a normal balance of this pathogenic bacteria here, or classes of bacteria. So we can restore, let's say, the microbiome, make it more robust. And what does it mean? Make a robust microbiome is two things. One is to have a domination of good bacteria and reduce the quantity of bad bacteria or pathogen. But also among these good bacteria, we want a diversity of good bacteria. We don't want only one category of good bacteria. We want really more good bacteria, but more diverse good bacteria to be able to tackle different challenges. And that's the kind of study we run as well with, again, our biosolutions. What you can see, first of all, on the right on your screen here, you can see what can happen to a microbiome when we treat different birds, and each dot is one bird, the average of his microbiome, if I may say, and the diversity of all these birds all together. Then in the green triangle, you see the bird treated with our probiotics. So again, each little point is, let's say, the balance or the average of the microbiome of our birds. And you can see how uniform are the population of birds which are treated with probiotic compared to the other population in the bluer kind of triangle, where you see much more, let's say, uniformity or heterogeneity between the birds in the flock. So obviously some are going well, but others are really have a microbiome going in the wrong direction. And similarly, in the table you see on the left here, you can see, as I mentioned, in the control group, certainly there is a good bacteria, lactobacillus, but when we treat it with biosolution, we have much more of this good bacteria. And when we look to the bad bacteria, the pathogens, again, the control group get 3.7, 3.3% of this very bad pathogen, and we could control them with biosolutions. So to shift the microbiome on the right direction. So again, in front of FCR challenge, the key message is think biosolutions. Definitely through all this mode of action, they can protect the epithelium, increase the surface of absorption, they can make even this epithelium stronger, make the tight junction even tighter. They can interact also and improve the immune system, as you can see. And finally, they, of course, because they are bacteria for probiotics, they can interact with the microbiota on the right way, which is a more robust and diverse microbiome. So how can we continue that? Because at the end, it was mentioned as well from one of the previous speakers, we need to be sustainable and profitable. And that's, of course, FCR is the key parameters to achieve both. Because we know that every time we save this little penny, we save money for the industry, but also we save input costs for the producer, and ultimately we save resources before which are from the planet. Thank you a lot for your attention this morning.
Thank you so much, Christophe, for this presentation.
You're welcome.
It's really good to hear how we can regulate the microbiome in our advantage. And in Dutch we say, translated to English, who doesn't care about the small isn't worth the large. So 1 penny per 2 kilogram birds really makes a difference.
Yeah, when you have millions of chicken, you start to make a difference.
True. Are there any questions from our audience? I have one here. How far are we along with biosolutions? Are we just scratching the surface? And is there a lot to gain in the future? Or do we already know a lot?
Yeah. Well, the short answer will be yes and yes, okay? So,
all right. Thanks.
Do we know a lot? Yes, definitely we know a lot, and I would say it accelerates even, because not only now, the old-fashioned, you may have way to make research with a pipette, in the laboratories, I wouldn't say over, but it's replaced more and more with robots, which are working really efficiently. And we use them, of course, to accelerate our research. So we are well advanced, so that with some examples in what we know, but also we are absolutely amazed by what we can still continue to improve. Even in the same enzymes, we can save generation 1 and we can improve generation 2 and 3 and 4 to continue to improve and support the need of our customers and different industry. So I would say we are not at the beginning of the story, but we are far away to be at the end of the story.
Well, it's always good to hear. Thank you so much, Christophe.
You're welcome. And may thank you, Fabian, on a particular way for all our interaction. I'm very pleased to offer you a pair of socks, and they are chicken socks.
Thank you so much.
For your record. So I'm really pleased to offer you these socks, Fabian.
Oh, thank you so much, Christophe. I didn't expect that. Thank you. Can I have the clicker? So, I just have to empty my hands. Wow. Wow. I will fit them on after this session. Because we are already at the end of our session. But not before, of course, I want to thank today's speakers. Roger Devin, Arno de Krij, and Christophe Bost-Virinois. An applause for all you guys. And before you leave, I want to point you towards Poultry World's new initiative, which is the Sustainability Impact Initiative, which is on the screen here. This is the starting point where we can, where we invite the industry, all of you, to take a look at our website and come forward with your most sustainable products. And I think there are some candidates in the room already. This will start now and end in an award ceremony at VIV Utrecht in 2026. With that, it was my pleasure to have you all here as a guest of Poultry World. Thanks again for being here, and have a nice show here at VIV Asia. Thank you so much.